Every time you say checkmate, you're speaking Old Persian. Shah mat, the king is dead. That word, Shah, king, was the single thread that unraveled one of the greatest linguistic mysteries in history. For over 2,000 years, everything we knew about the Persian Empire, one of the largest the world had ever seen, came from the Greeks, their enemies, their rivals. The Persians themselves had been silenced, not by conquest, but by the death of their writing system. And then, in the 1830s, a young English soldier stared up at a cliff face in western Iran and decided to change that. To understand how that word unlocked an empire, we need to travel to a cliff in western Iran. 2,500 years ago, the main road connecting Babylon to the Persian highland capital of Ecbatana passed through a narrow valley at a place called Behistun. There, a sheer limestone cliff rises over 1,700 feet, and 300 feet up that cliff face, the Persian king Darius the Great carved a massive inscription, figures, symbols, and hundreds of lines of wedge-shaped marks pressed into polished rock, a royal billboard visible to every traveler on the road below. Those wedge-shaped marks are called cuneiform, from the Latin cunus, meaning wedge. A scribe pressed a reed stylus into wet clay at different angles to form signs. Cuneiform is a script, not a language. Many different languages used it, just as the Latin alphabet today serves English, French, and Turkish. Darius carved his message in 3 languages, Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. And when the work was finished, his builders destroyed the scaffolding and stairway behind them, sealing the inscription 300 feet above the road. Within centuries, no one alive could read a single sign. For centuries, travelers stared up at the inscription and guessed wrong, spectacularly wrong. Medieval visitors trained in classical Greek literature saw a queen, Semiramis, the legendary Assyrian ruler, celebrating a military triumph. Later, Christian travelers saw something entirely different, the 12 apostles standing before Christ, the floating disc reinterpreted as a crucifix. By the 17th century, scholars steeped in biblical scholarship were certain they saw King Shalmaneser of Assyria parading Israelite captives from the 10 lost tribes. Each guess tells us nothing about the inscription and everything about the guesser. Classical assumptions produce classical answers. Christian frameworks produce Christian answers. Biblical literalism produced biblical answers. The monument had become a mirror. Then, in 1835, someone arrived who didn't guess. He climbed. Henry Rawlinson was no trained scholar, a soldier with the East India Company, but one with an extraordinary gift for languages and no fear of heights. Posted to Persia as a military advisor, he encountered the Behistun cliff and recognized 2 things. The inscription was enormous, hundreds of lines in 3 distinct scripts. This recalled the Rosetta Stone, where Champollion had cracked Egyptian writing using 3 scripts, hieroglyphs, Demotic, and Greek. The parallel was striking, but Champollion had Greek, a fully known living language, as his anchor. Rawlinson had nothing like that. He would need to reconstruct Old Persian while simultaneously deciphering the script. Getting the text was the first miracle, decoding it was the second. Rawlinson free climbs the sheer rock face, no ropes, no safety equipment, and begins transcribing the inscription character by character. He doesn't know what any of it means yet. He's copying blind. But even at this stage, he notices something important. The 3 zones of text use different scripts, and the same content takes up different amounts of space in each zone. This confirms his hypothesis. 3 different languages encoding the same message. Old Persian occupies 1 zone, Elamite another, and Babylonian the 3rd. The same royal declaration, carved 3 times, a code breaker's dream, if he can find the key. Rawlinson's breakthrough came from royal vanity. He knew from Herodotus that Persian kings opened every inscription with long strings of titles: X, Great King, King of Kings, Son of Y, Great King, King of Kings. The word king would repeat 5, 6, 7 times in the opening lines alone. Rawlinson scans the Old Persian zone of his transcription and finds it. A short cluster of cuneiform signs appears again and again in the preamble. That cluster must mean king. The Old Persian word for king sounds close to Shah, closer to Kshak with guttural consonants. Rawlinson assigns phonetic values to each sign in that cluster. He has his first confirmed letters. Now the decisive step. Royal inscriptions name the king first, then his father. In the Behistun text, these two names start with different cuneiform signs. Rawlinson knew the Achaemenid dynasty. Cyrus's father was Cambyses. Both names start with K. Cambyses' father was Cyrus, both K again. But these inscriptions' author and father begin differently. Neither Cyrus nor Cambyses fits. The only Achaemenid king whose name starts differently from his father's, Darius, son of Hystaspes, D and H match. The name Darius yields a whole cascade of new phonetic values. Each confirmed character unlocks more words, which confirm more characters, dominoes falling across the text. And that word for king, Shah, you already know it. You've been saying it your whole life. When a chess player declares checkmate, they're echoing the Old Persian Shah mat, the king is dead. The very word Rawlinson identified in a 2,500-year-old cliff face survives on every chessboard in the world. Language carries history even when no one notices. Every time you end a chess game, you speak the same royal vocabulary that gave Rawlinson his way in. The thread that, once pulled, unraveled the silence of an entire empire. With the code cracked, Persia could finally speak, and what it said changed everything. The inscription was the victory proclamation of Darius the Great, carved around 520 BCE. It declares how he seized the Persian throne and crushed 19 revolts across a vast empire stretching from Egypt to Central Asia. For the first time, scholars could read Persian history in Persian words, not filtered through Greek bias, not reconstructed from pottery and ruins, but direct testimony from a king addressing his subjects and his gods. And the Behistun inscription didn't just unlock one text, it unlocked an entire script system. With cuneiform deciphered, thousands of clay tablets from across Mesopotamia became readable, administrative records from Persepolis, Babylonian letters, Assyrian royal archives, even Sumerian poems. 2,000 years of human civilization, written in wedge-shaped marks, suddenly had a voice again. One cliff in Iran opened the door to the entire ancient Near East. History is never neutral. For centuries, what we knew about Persia was really what the Greeks said about Persia, Herodotus, Xenophon, Plutarch. The Persians were the villains, the decadent despots, the barbarian horde at the gates of civilization. Decipherment didn't just add information, it shifted whose voice gets heard. The Greeks weren't wrong about everything, but they told one side. Rawlinson's achievement, part physical courage, part intellectual detective work, gave the other side a chance to speak. And it reminds us that the stories we inherit are shaped by which codes we've cracked and which we haven't. Every silence in the historical record is not an absence of speech. It's a language we haven't yet learned to read.